A missionary on a South Pacific island was walking with the village chief teaching him English. As they passed a stream, the missionary pointed and said to the chief, "Stream." The chief looked and repeated, "Stream." They walked a little further on the path, and the missionary pointed to a bird and said, "Bird." The chief looked and repeated, "Bird." A little farther down the path, the missionary spotted a couple making love in the grass. Not really knowing what to say to the chief, the missionary said, "Man riding bicycle." The chief looked, then pulled out his blowgun and shot 2 poisoned darts into them. The missionary was horrified and asked the chief why he did it. The chief replied, "Man riding my bicycle." The police were called to a female gym. The female manager ran out to greet the 2 male officers as they exited their vehicle. "Please come quickly," she said in horror. "We've found a peephole drilled into the changing room. Some pervert has been watching us." "Don't worry," the policeman said reassuringly. "We'll track down the suspect right away. Please tell all the ladies to go back to their exercising. There's nothing to worry about anymore." The gym manager nodded, relieved. "And what about the hole in the wall?" "Rest assured," the other police officer said, "we'll be looking into it." The inventor of the Harley-Davidson motorcycle, Arthur Davidson, died and went to heaven. At the pearly gates, St. Peter told Mr. Davidson, "Since you've been such a good man, and your motorcycles have changed the world, your reward is you can hang out with anyone you want in heaven." Mr. Davidson thought about it for a minute and then said, "I want to hang out with God." "Very well," said St. Peter, and took Mr. Davidson to the throne room and introduced him to God. God and Mr. Davidson exchanged greetings. Then Mr. Davidson said to God, "Since you invented women, I'd like to point out a few things." God said, "Ah, okay. Well," said Mr. Davidson, "professional to professional, you have some major design flaws in your invention." God replied, "I'm listening." Mr. Davidson continues, "There's too much inconsistency in the front-end protrusion. It chatters constantly at high speeds. Most of the rear ends are too soft and have excessive wobble. The intake is placed way too close to the exhaust, and the maintenance costs are outrageous." God ponders all this for a moment. "You may have some good points there. Hold on a minute." God went to his celestial supercomputer, typed in a few words, and waited for the results. The computer whirred and beeped, and eventually it printed out a slip of paper, which God read. God said, "Where it may be true that my invention has flaws." Holding up the slip of paper, God continued, "According to these numbers, it is also true that more men are riding my invention than yours." A school teacher asked her students to make a sentence containing the expression, "I presumed." One little girl held up her hand and said, "Yesterday my mother hand-washed the dinner dishes, and I presumed that the dishwasher was broken." "Very good," said the teacher. Another one said, "This morning, my father drove the Volkswagen out of the garage. I presumed that the BMW wouldn't start." "That's excellent," says the teacher. Little Johnny at the back of the classroom gets up and says, "Yesterday, I saw Grandpa leave the house with a newspaper under his arm and heading for the bush. I presumed that." The teacher interrupted him and said, "I stopped you because you have no idea what your grandfather was going to do, so you can't presume anything." Johnny says, "Please, teacher, let me finish my sentence." The teacher says, "Very well, continue." "As I was saying, I saw my grandpa heading for the bush with a newspaper under his arm. I presumed he was going for a dump because he can't read." A policeman was testing 3 dumb brothers who were training to become detectives. To test their skills in recognizing a suspect, he shows the first guy a picture for 5 seconds and then hides it. "This is your suspect. How would you recognize him?" The first guy answers, "That's easy. We'll catch him fast because he only has one eye." The policeman says, "Well, that's because the picture I showed is his side profile." Slightly flustered by this ridiculous response, he flashes the picture for 5 seconds at the second guy and asks him, "This is your suspect?" How would you recognize him? The second guy smiles and says, "Ha! He'd be too easy to catch because he only has one ear." The policeman angrily responds, "What's the matter with you two? Of course only one eye and one ear are showing, because it's a picture of his side profile. Is that the best answer you can come up with?" Extremely frustrated at this point, he shows the picture to the third guy, and in a very testy voice asks, "This is your suspect. How would you recognize him?" He quickly adds, "Think hard before giving me a stupid answer." The guy looks at the picture intently for a moment and says, "The suspect wears contact lenses." The policeman is surprised and speechless because he really doesn't know himself if the suspect wears contacts or not. Well, that's an interesting answer. Wait here for a few minutes while I check his file, and I'll get back to you on that. He leaves the room and goes to his office, checks the suspect's file in his computer, and comes back with a beaming smile on his face. "Wow, I can't believe it. It's true. The suspect does in fact wear contact lenses. Good work. How were you able to make such an astute observation?" "That's easy," the guy replied. "He can't wear regular glasses because he only has one eye and one ear." A mother is driving a little girl to her friend's house for a play date. "Mommy," the little girl asks, "how old are you?" "Honey, you're not supposed to ask a lady her age," the mother replied. "It's not polite." "Okay," the little girl says, "how much do you weigh?" "Now really," the mother says, "those are personal questions and are really none of your business." Undaunted, the little girl asks, "Why did you and Daddy get a divorce?" "That is enough questions, young lady, honestly." The exasperated mother walks away as the two friends begin to play. "My mom won't tell me anything about her," the little girl says to her friend. "Well," says the friend, "all you need to do is look at her driver's license. It is like a report card. It has everything on it." Later that night, the little girl says to her mother, "I know how old you are. You are 32. The mother is surprised and asks, "How did you find that out?" "I also know that you weigh 140 pounds. The mother is past surprised and shocked now. "How in heaven's name did you find that out?" "And," the little girl says triumphantly, "I also know why you and Daddy got a divorce." "Oh, really?" the mother asks. "Why?" "Because you got an F in sex." Two 90-year-old women, Bertha and Betty, had been best friends all of their lives. When it was clear that Bertha was dying, Betty visited her every day. One day Betty said, "Bertha, we both loved playing softball all our lives, and we played all through high school. Please do me one favor. When you get to heaven, somehow you must let me know if there's women's softball there." Bertha looked up at Betty from her deathbed and said, "Betty, you've been my best friend for many years. If it's at all possible, I'll do this favor for you." Shortly after that, Bertha passed on. A few nights later, Betty was awakened from a sound sleep by a blinding flash of white light and a voice calling out to her, "Betty, Betty, who is it?" asked Betty, sitting up suddenly. "Who is it?" "Betty, it's me, Bertha." "You're not Bertha. Bertha just died." "I'm telling you it's me, Bertha," insisted the voice. "Bertha, where are you?" "In heaven," replied Bertha. "I have some really good news and a little bad news." "Tell me the good news first," said Betty. "The good news," Bertha said, "is that there's women's softball in heaven. Better yet, all of our old buddies who died before me are here too. Even better than that, we're all young again. Better still, it's always springtime, and it never rains or snows. And best of all, we can play softball all we want, and we never get tired." "That's fantastic," said Betty. "It's beyond my wildest dreams. So what's the bad news?" Bertha replies, "You're pitching Tuesday." My friends, if you want to watch other funny jokes, subscribe to the channel.